Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. It's good to be with you as always. This is our weekly meeting, and we're in the middle of Lent, and there's so much to talk about when Lent comes. There's so many good topics that we can choose from, and I decided to go with something that really isn't talked about much during Lent. It's one of those topics that you may have heard about applied differently. When we think about lying, for example, we usually think of lying to one another. Today I want to talk about the art of lying in the spiritual life, the way the devil deceives us and tricks us in our minds. And I feel like this is something that we kind of need to address during Lent. The devil is real. This is not like make-believe. This is not something that we just say to scare people. The devil is against us. The same way God is really trying to be for us and push us in the right direction. There's an opposing force. There's a way that he works. And the way he works is by lying. And if you go to the beginning of the scripture, you find that the first thing he does is he tricks Adam and Eve. He lies to them. He deceives them. And so what I want to do with today's lecture is kind of survey and explore the idea of lying and deceit. The deceit of the devil in our lives and how we can apply this to our spiritual struggle. Because we need to understand the mechanics of the deception. We have to understand his ways. We have to understand how he tricks us. So, deceit is a lie. And you're going to see that I have a lot of verses in this lecture. Because I'm trying to survey the whole Bible on this topic. So you'll see that it's all a lot of verses, and we're going to talk about each one. Now, we don't need to get through all of them. I think I have 43 things, but we're not going to get through them. So this is from Psalm 119, verse 118. You reject all those who stray from your statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. Their deceit is falsehood. So God rejects those people who go away from Him, and their lie is false. It's not true. And so this is something we have to remember. The tongue is an instrument of deceit. We use our tongues to glorify God, but we can also use our tongues to lie, to trick, to persuade people with the wrong thing, not the right thing. Their throat is an open tomb. With their tongues they have practiced deceit. Right? That's so important. That's from Romans 3:13. We use our tongues to glorify God, and we also use our tongues to go against and do the evil work of lying. Right? So be careful when it comes to the fast. Be watchful over what you say. Don't be so quick to just say anything. We know that the tongue is one of those members in the body that can set a fire, right? We know in James, we hear that in James. It's such a small member, but it can light up a whole forest, right? It could set it aflame because it's such a small thing, but it can spark such a catastrophe. That's one thing. It's also like a rudder, right? A rudder, it's that small little piece to a ship, right? A lot of us can't imagine that this small little rudder can move a whole ship, and it does. The tongue is the same thing. And when it comes to lying, this is one of the instruments that we can use. And we're being lied to sometimes. And we're falling into the lies of the world. And we listen to a lot of things, right? There's a lot of voices out there. And we listen to those lies. We embrace those lies. We accept them. We subscribe to them. We say, this is what I want to do. And we don't know that we're being tricked. Deceit comes from the heart. It's something inside of us, right? And in Mark 7:21-22 it says, For from within, out of the heart of man, or men proceed evil thoughts. So from the heart of man proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornication, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and foolishness. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So we have to understand, I always like saying this, that it's an internal struggle. It's an internal battle. When we are going through Lent and we're trying to make our resolutions and keep our resolutions and stay away from those things that we've said we're going to stay away from, we're always in this dilemma. And that dilemma usually takes place in the heart. We're kind of torn, we're split. We don't want to give those things up because they're dear to us, and that's usually stored up in the heart. The heart is a very sensitive sanctuary, place. And out of the heart overflow all of the issues of life, right? All of the issues of life are put in the heart. It's a characteristic of the heart. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Jeremiah 17:9. A lot of us are emotional sometimes with our spiritual lives. And we think that our emotions will lead us right, the right way. But the heart is a deceitful thing, right? And we know that from our experience with all sorts of things, right? It's like that burning feeling to do something bad. It's amazing how we can have that feeling for the wrong thing and not the right thing. It kind of shows us that we're not in the best condition in our lives. You know, when our hearts are burning to do the wrong thing. You know, it's a deceitful thing. It's desperately wicked. Who can know it? So examine your heart. Understand that it's coming from within you. Something's inside of you that needs to be uprooted. There's something that needs to be uprooted and cleaned out. God abhors deceit. You shall destroy those who speak falsehood. The Lord abhors bloodthirsty and deceitful men. We shouldn't be so, comfortable with lies. One lie becomes two lies. Two lies becomes four lies. It's an exponential thing. It grows rapidly, right? And what happens is we do this, right, with people, and then we start doing it to ourselves. We start living delusional lives. We're very delusional. We're not aware of, where we are. We don't know. We don't know how to measure ourselves. We're lost because of the constant lies that we accept and we spread and we choose to believe. So that doesn't please God. It's obviously forbidden. It's something that we shouldn't think is okay. A lot of us say, it's just a white lie. The devil can also do the same thing. It's okay. It just kind of covers it up, makes it nice, and it's okay. You can do this. It's not that bad. It looks okay. It's not the end of the world, right? That's how he kind of gets us. We try to justify things all the time, right? I'm speaking from my experience. I'm not just imposing these things. I'm telling you from my experience. I try to justify things that I'm hearing in my mind and my heart and that I'm living out, right? We try to justify the wrong that we do. Always, all the time. And it comes from this. We don't really understand that it's something that should be and is forbidden. Do not be a witness against your neighbor without cause, for would you deceive with your lips, right? Proverbs 24-28. And for he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking deceit. 1 Peter 3:10. If you want to see good days, stop saying lies. Refrain your tongue from evil and from speaking lies. Christ was perfectly free from deceit. There was no lies that came out of his mouth. Right? Everything he said was true, and everything he said he did, and everything he did had a meaning and a purpose. So, in Isaiah 53:9 it says, "And they made his grave with the wicked, but with the rich his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth." Right? The truth hurts. It hurts to hear because it condemns. Right? There was a story where there was truth being like a person, and a story. Story was telling truth. Why do they like truth was telling the story? Why do people like you more? Because they hate me. People hate the truth. And they're like talking to each other, and they say, the story was telling truth, they like me because I'm not so blunt. I'm not so direct. I let them make a decision. It's like the parable. The parables are designed for you to make a decision at the end. They don't confront you up in your face. They have truth to them, but they don't confront you. You have to confront yourself when you read a parable. You have to come up with your own conclusion, your own decision. I've been beating this one to death, but I've been using the example of David and Nathan, right? When he committed the big sin, right? And he came to him and he told him a parable. It's one of the only parables you'll find in the Old Testament. And he told him, there was a man, right? Who heard me say this? Right. So I didn't say it to him. There was a man who had a sheep, and he had one sheep. It was his favorite sheep, because all he had was one. And then there was another man who had many sheep. And this man who had many sheep was interested in the sheep of that other man, because he was greedy. That's usually how it goes, right? People that have a lot want more, and want to have what they shouldn't have. And this is sort of pointing to David, right? David had everything he wanted and everything he needed. And what did he do? He went after the guy's wife, and he took her, right? So he's telling him the parable, and David was getting heated, right? Because the parable is not really talking about him. It's really designed for him to kind of be the judge. So David was so upset. And he said, Nathan said, so what should happen to this man? He should be put to death. This man who took this sheep from the man who had one sheep, he took what wasn't his, and he was greedy, and he has enough, and this is unjust, and he should be put to death. So Nathan then kind of just said, you kind of judged yourself. That's the truth. The truth, it's tough to hear, but we have to say it, right? Because it needs to be said. That's what the Lord Jesus Christ did. That's why he wasn't so popular, right? He wasn't always popular when he talked to the Pharisees and the scribes, and he pointed out their wrong. I mean, this one is not like, the saints are free from deceit. We're all humans, we all make mistakes, but the idea behind this one is we struggle to keep God in our lives, and we struggle to keep the relationship with God honest and true. And so this is why I wrote this the way I did, because they decide to continue with God all the way to the end. He who has a clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, nor sworn deceitfully. Right? The saints did this. The saints spent their whole lives trying to please God and not live a lie and not be in this sin of lying and falling into lies. Let me give some attention to this side of the room. I'll just skip down to the last verse. And in their mouth was found no deceit. Right? For they are without fault before the throne of God. Revelations 14:5. So this is how Revelation describes those people that are standing in the kingdom. Right? These are people who were found to be honest. We should definitely have this idea of being against this way of living, which is go against it. Fight against the feeling and the temptation to justify these behaviors and these actions in your life. My lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. Condemn it. Condemn yourself. Always be harsh on yourself when it comes to your own spiritual life. Instead of pointing at other people and saying, oh, he did this, she did that, just focus on yourself and think about how you need to be corrected and you need to change. That's the problem. The problem is when someone is always thinking they're right. And that's part of being delusional. I've dealt with people like this. I'm speaking from experience again. There's some people out there that are infallible. You know what I'm talking about? They can never be wrong. And this is a big lie. Everything has to go their way. If it doesn't go their way, it's like they're so, they think the world revolves around them. And these people can be very delusional because they let themselves get to that point where everything is my way or no way at all. They're very hard to work with. They're hard to deal with. They're hard. You know what I'm talking about? Sometimes we become that kind of monster when we just let thing after thing slide and we kind of just let all of these lies in our life pile up and it becomes like who we are. You get what I'm saying? That's what we need to pay attention to this fast. Stop justifying your behaviors and the wrongs that you do. Confront them. Confront them and say this is not good. This needs to be addressed. This is something evil in my life. It needs to be uprooted. It needs to be pushed out. It needs to be thrown away. It's something we should avoid. It's not something we should be falling into every time. If you hit a pothole once, right? It happens, happens by accident, right? But if you're on Metropolitan, there's that pothole and you're just hitting it every time. Isn't that a problem? Isn't it a problem when we have that repetitive, redundant mistake in our life? We should be aware that there's this trap that He set before us and that we should maneuver around it. Make a mistake once and then learn how to maneuver around it. If I have walked with falsehood, or if my foot has hastened to deceit, right? Sometimes we run to the lies. We resort to the evil. We just kind of give up and say, I'm going back into my little cave. I'm going back into my own problems, right? Avoid people that have this, this problem. They're always lying, right? He who works deceit shall not dwell within my house. This is very clear. He who tells lies shall not continue in my presence. Psalm 101, verse 7. Stay away from these things because they're contagious. They're gonna spread onto you, into your life. You need to kind of give this some space. These people are, we're sometimes trapped, right, when it comes to this. we're like trapped in our own little lives and we're not able to get out, right? We need to be prayerful about this and say, how can I get out of this? How can I change? Why have I embraced this lie? Why is it something that, has become so regular in my life? And this is how we should pray. Vindicate me, O God, and plead my cause against an ungodly nation. O deliver me from the deceitful and unjust man. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. We make all of these prayers in our life, and we believe what we're praying. We want to make sure that we're not falling into this stuff and that we're not surrounded by it, and we're doing everything we can to get out of it. He will redeem their life from oppression and violence, and precious shall be their blood in his sight. Psalm 72, verse 14. We're oppressed, we're attacked, we're always in these situations where we're feeling, weak. So we want to be delivered, right? The children of Israel were praying for a way out. They were always hopeful. They were always looking to God and making Him their priority. And they were being chased. And when they got out of all of this, they murmured against God and they complained. And they said it was better when we were there in Egypt, right? Why did that happen? It's because they forgot their first love. They forgot the truth. They forgot the truth that God was always there for them and always cared for them and always wanted to provide for them. But what happens? We forget our first love. We forget how God treated us in our early days, in our youth. How many chances He gave us. How many times He kind of made it possible for us to change and repent and all of this stuff. This is a big one. There's people who preach lies, who teach lies. We have to know what a heresy is. We have to know what a lie is. We have to be sure that we're not just listening to what sounds good and what, makes me feel good. If it feels good, do it. You've heard that before, right? It doesn't work that way. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of those things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Beware, lest anyone cheat you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to Christ. These are big. These are big. Just because someone sounds smart doesn't mean they're saying the truth. That's a big thing, for us these days. This philosopher, he's brilliant. He's right. Does that mean they're right?
Sorry, this is more to do with the last slide than it's to do with this. But how would you address it? Like the deceit that you're telling yourself, or like what you're hiding from yourself, is that God doesn't have like a presence in your life. You're saying we're denying the truth that God has worked through our life and there's all this love and you're denying your first love. But what if you're not feeling like that is your first love, or you don't feel like He's ever really been a presence in your life? How would you address that deceit?
Yeah. So some of us are not aware of what God has done for us. And you're right. We have to kind of go back and say, well, let's reflect on our lives and let's see what God has done for us. Some of us are in that place in life where, I haven't experienced that first love. So what are you talking about? Going back and remembering your first love. This first love is all about the grace period in the spiritual life, right? The grace period is when things are, done simply and almost effortlessly. Being with God is enjoyable and you're excited and motivated. And that's the grace period. And you're growing. It's like a baby growing rapidly. It's the grace period. So.
But doesn't some of that have to do with I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
But what if that has a lot to do with the emotional aspect of that spiritual high that you get, and then all of a sudden you're on this upwards trend, or this upward trend of having a great relationship with God, but then once those emotions fade away, you're kind of back on the start. It's like, it's almost as if you were deceiving yourself into having these false, elated, joyful, loving emotions towards this God who you're not necessarily familiar with. So I know like the Lenten period is obviously like a time where you can actually come to truly know God, but like how would you deal with like if those emotions are coming from this place of like almost like a false like joy and love?
We have to discern things all the time with the help of others. It can't be done alone. So always, consult your confession father or someone that you trust that is kind of helping you discern these things in your life or these matters in your life. So, being emotional about everything is not healthy. I have to love God unconditionally. I have to learn, and that's maturity. Even if it's a bad day, I'm gonna pray. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. It's not because I'm not feeling it today. You're not gonna hear from me today. It can't be that way. So maturity is to love God unconditionally. We need to pay attention to how this is something, like if we're not aware of this and we're not sure of like where God is in my life, we have to spend time just reflecting on the past. Look back and put on the lens. Have a new vision. Look back at things in the right way, in a new spirit, with a new understanding. Because it makes sense when you look backwards. Look back and say, wow, God got me out of this one. He helped me here, He helped me there. And so sometimes we can live life and just get through a lot of life and not notice God, and not acknowledge Him, and not see Him in anything. So we have to get to that point where, no, I now see Him, and therefore let me look back and kind of remember everything He's done for me. If I don't do that, then it's sort of like, He only existed when I said He existed. And you'll see this in the lives of the saints. They're always looking back, and they're always saying, well, wow, look at this and look at that. It makes sense now. Any other questions? These are great. I was going off in my own little thing here, but thank you. Lay aside deceit and seek the truth. Therefore, laying aside all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking, as newborn babes desire the pure milk of the word, that you may grow thereby. 1 Peter 2, 1 through 2. It's amazing how we have to put those things aside. And one of those things are all of those lies and all of those things that we have gotten used to. Hypocrisy, envy, evil speaking. And as newborn babes desire the pure milk of the word. The Bible is our source of nourishment. We need to get rid of these things in order to grow. Ministers, people like us, should lay aside lying and deceit. But we have renounced the hidden things of shame, not walking in craftiness, nor handling the word of God deceitfully, but by manifestation of the truth, commending ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of God. This is so important. We have to be faithful. We have to be honest in our teaching. We have to make sure that it's according to the gospel, the truth, right? The good news. And we have to be careful of these things, right? Especially for those of you who serve, same thing. Our lives we need to be real with ourselves. We have to live honest lives. We can't just be hypocritical and just live one way in church and another way outside. These masks, these facades, these things that we like to do with ourselves, right? We like to look and appear to be great, but inside we're hypocritical, right? That's how the Lord spoke to the Pharisees. He said, you wash the outside of the cup, but in the inside it's what? It's filthy, it's messed up, it's not clean. Work from the inside out, guys. This is my message to you all. Please work from the inside out. Don't always think about your outward appearance. We're always looking at that. The world is teaching us to just be like that. Build these, facades. Put a mask on, cover everything. Don't reveal anything. It's shameful. Hide. All of this stuff. And what happens is, we're not like honest people. And we become something we don't want to be. The wicked are full of deceit. This is another thing. Like, those people that are truly wicked, they're full of lies. Being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness, they are whisperers. Romans 1:29. I'm going to end very soon. I'm going to do a few more. I think we all get the point.
I have two questions, kind of.
Sure.
So my first question is that, like, are we assuming that deceitfulness and being lying are the same things? Because you keep
They're synonymous, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the second thing is that, a lot of these things, we're kind of stating oh, we have to do this, we have to do that, but where's the practicality?
Yeah,
So,
which is what we'll open up at the end. Agree? That's a good idea. We can open that up now, actually. So what's your question? What's your practical question?
I'll get back.
But maybe think about it, and then at the end we can open it up.
Yeah.
Like, how do we do this practically? Yeah, the deceit is devised, it's planned out. I'm just going to skip to the last verse. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceitful. The words of his mouth are wickedness and deceit. He has ceased to be wise and to do good. I hope you see the correlation between what we say and what we do. I hope you see this. I mean, this is the whole point, and I'm going to end here because it's getting boring, and I want it to get practical now. There's a correlation between what you say and what you do. That's the bottom line. I always say this, and I really mean what I'm saying right now. Do you believe what you pray? And do you pray what you believe? Because if you don't really take a second to think about that question that I just asked, then you're just going through some crazy, long 3-hour tisbah for no reason. And you're going through a 3-hour liturgy for no reason. And you're being haunted by the priests to pray your adbeya that just doesn't make sense to you, or you're being told to pray and read the Bible, and do you believe what you pray, and do you pray what you believe? Because you can say one thing and you're doing something totally different. So let's stop talking and do what? Do it. Embody the truth. Be the truth. Live it out. And then let it come out organically and naturally. Versus being someone that's well-versed. He knows his Bible, he's smart. He knows, all of the Coptic stuff. He knows all the hymns. She knows all the hymns. They know the right thing. They know the right thing to say all the time. And then you go home and it's a different lifestyle. And this person is totally conflicted and in a dilemma and just wants to give up. And this is the time where we feel like that the most during Great Lent, because we're being asked to fast. And we understand the essence of fasting, right? And we're yeah, so I'm fasting right now, and it's not about food. But I'm lying to myself because, I'm not fasting in the very spiritual way from abstaining from sin. So I justify my behaviors. You get what I'm saying? I'm saying stuff, I know stuff. I'm always living in this kind of way, just saying stuff to myself and justifying my behavior. And just knowing what to say all the time. Like you're always right. And you can never be wrong. And then when someone tries to convince you and persuade you, it's impossible. Because it doesn't work that way. It works by what I just said. Please believe what you pray. Like, think about what you're praying. Like, always stop for a moment and say, do I believe this? And if you do say, yeah, I believe this, or I don't believe this, then it's like, this is a moment for you, you know? You have to kind of think about this and work through it. So let's open it up to the practical. I'm going to end here because it's way too much. But what are the practical ways of doing all of this? You know, give me examples and we could probably start tackling them.
So kind of like what I was trying to get at before with the emotional thing is that like, I think when you come at it from a place of like, like, you know, like when you're in a relationship with someone and it's like that peak high or whatever of like love and it's just like, oh, like I love you so much, but like you don't really know this person, you just love them because like whatever, it's this like feeling that's like flowing out of you. I think that comes a lot of the time like with God. I think because we don't actually love him, we don't actually know him, like we're not taking the time to literally like believe what we're praying, know what we're praying, know the church, know the like things, like know the tradition of the church, stuff like that. I'm sorry, I just came from like a lecture in Long Island where they were talking about the tradition of the church. But like, yeah, so I just feel like if we started to like really know who God is, like, and stop just like saying like, yeah, like I love God because he did this and this, like who cares like what he does for you? Like why do you really love God? Like, you know, like start to look past the like super emotional hyped up thing of like this is love in the sense that we know it, like the human love, and start to like really try to like sort out your emotions and like grow with him in a different way, like not so much in like a like intense heightened emotion state and like more of a like a logical kind of way. But that, I mean, that's just like that's something that I think, I don't know if that was,
yeah.
But
again, we're talking about this emotions and how they can be deceiving. You know, it's true. It's very true to for many of us where we're only thinking about how we feel. If it feels good, I'll do it. That's like the biggest deception of our time.
yeah.
It is. It really is. If it
Ever,
feels
like,
good,
do you-
if
do
it
you-
doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. Yeah, do you, right? Or I hear that all the time. Right?
No, for real, and it's like it's such a lie. It's like a lie we tell ourselves, like just do you, fam. Like no. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, if it feels good, do it, right? That's what we want to go by. If it doesn't feel right, and you know, we think that we know what's right from wrong here. That's the amazing thing, you know. Like, we're all of a sudden capable of discernment.
Yeah.
And like, we know right from wrong now. And we know what's good and what's bad. And we're just going by feelings. And that's a huge trap. And then when something hurts a little bit, we run away from it. I'm not saying inflict and impose pain on yourself. I'm saying at least pay attention to this idea of how we are like so taken by that emotion of that feel-good thing. Like what they call it dopamine, right? You just want all this dopamine all the time. You don't need that all the time. It's not healthy. You can't depend on it. If you are, you're not going to be functional, right? Question over there?
Yeah, so if it's like regarding addressing like that deceitfulness in our lives, like approaching our Christian like lives, whatever, I think maybe like as a community, like we're becoming more transparent, and like when you talk about something more often, it tends to be like more out in the open, so there's like less deceit, at least from what I think. Like, you know, if you're constantly talking about something, there's less room to like lie about it per se. So I think that we've come a long way, especially like with all these types of meetings that we're consistently talking about like the Bible and like all these different things. So I think that also helps practical.
So the practice of confession. I want to open that up. Like, yeah, I'm sure we heard of confession, but how many of us really practice it properly? I think a lot of us, maybe it's wrong for me to assume this, but I'll speak for myself. It took me a very long time to get out of this, routine confession kind of lifestyle. Like, I just need to confess so that I could take communion, so that I could wear deacon, so that I could, get married, whatever, right? Like, we just do these things. We need to understand the sacrament of confession, how to discern, how to understand, how to bring things to light. If you expose something that's dark, it disappears, right? So we need to do that. And some of us are not even into confession and the practice of confession. Some of us don't do it. So I don't think it's safe to assume everyone here is going to confession regularly and, experiences something that's edifying and good for them. A lot of us are still afraid of it, confused about it. Like, Abuna's judging me. Makes no sense to me. It's like nothing's changing, right? It's what you want it to be. I feel like we have to say that at this level. Like, it's what you want it to be. Like, you'll find people that take it seriously and they ask a lot of questions. They're really interested in changing, and they're more sincere about their spiritual life. So it's not just like something they have to do, check, but more like, I'm really trying to change. I'm really making the effort. That's what we need to do. We need to go the next step. What's the next step? It's actions. We should inspire people to take the next step, which is act. Go out and do it. Perform it. Live the gospel. Instead of just attending meetings, just listening to the same topics again and again and again, and just getting bored out of my mind. Right? We should get to a point where it's like, that's it. Enough is enough. I need to do something about this. I need to make a change in my life.
I feel like knowledge has a lot to do with it too. If you don't know, then how do you know? And I think if we make ourselves more knowledgeable in why we do a certain thing and why it's important, getting to, like, off of what Jackie was saying, getting to really know God for who He is, I think all that other stuff just kind of comes into play. Like, for me personally, last year when I joined, fasting became very easily. And I think it's because I was trying so hard to find God and know God. And I'm learning now in my second year that fasting is much more difficult this year, and I think it's because of my lack of knowledge. I was focusing on like the rules so much, like, okay, don't do this. I was reading the ingredients, like, he could tell you, I went crazy.
Yeah.
And none of that really mattered because I wasn't doing my homework, so to speak.
Yeah.
And really getting to the root of why.
Yeah, I agree. Knowledge, what is eternal life? That they may know you. This is what the Lord said, right? That they may know you. So knowing God is so important. And yeah, everything will come naturally when we know Him. It will be a byproduct of knowing Him. So that's a way of going to the next step. The next step is actually studying and actually learning more and digging deeper and doing these small groups that we're talking about, right? I hope that you all really think about like the small groups. Instead of just having this one meeting, we should have small groups where people go to a group or, join a group that they are interested in. There could be a Bible study group, there could be a patristic group, there could be, a group that does mission, there could be a group that goes and does prison ministry, there can be a group that does different things, right? So it's about doing things, we do things communally, and then we do things privately. And then it's like, this is the rhythm of our life, So we go to church, it's a community, and then we go back to our life, and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So we should be thinking about how we can get deeper, more knowledgeable. Like you said, by studying, by praying, by listening to lectures, there's so many sources of knowledge.
And it makes more sense too, like when it comes to confession, which I'll be the first one to admit I haven't been to confession. I've been in confession once my whole entire life. And it's like you're afraid to admit that you did something that that wasn't quite right. And if you get to know God, you live a more Christ life. And confession is nothing if you're not afraid to say anything. If you get to know God, if you really get to know God, you act better, you do better, you think better. And confession doesn't seem so scary if you're doing the right thing. If you're not doing the right thing, confession is very scary, but it's getting all of that out in the open, I think, which it is like a good step to take too. Maybe, me, myself included, maybe taking this step of something that might seem really scary can help me or us or, one step closer to God.
Yeah. It's true that when we're committing the sin, it's sort of like God doesn't exist. And then when we're going to confess, He exists now. So I start running. It's amazing how we're deceived. We're being played with. You get what I'm saying? In our heads, we're always kind of like, so I'm tempted by something. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it. At that moment, you saying I'm going to do it is, yeah, God, I'm going to put you in the closet right now. Is that true? Can you stuff God in the closet? No. That's the lie. And then you get tricked again on the other side when it's like, right now you're feeling guilty and now you want to clean yourself up. And it's like, oh, I'm so afraid, I'm so shy. How can I do that? How can I admit it? You see how we are being played with? That's like a perfect example right there. Let's just understand that we have to experience some discomfort. We need to get there needs to be some vulnerability. And when we experience that, things begin to transform in our lives. That vulnerability with God is great, with other people is great, with our priests, with our friends, with our families. We get to know someone in a more special way, and it becomes real. It's no longer just a bunch of things that I just do. Now I'm being honest with myself. So that's where we need to get.
I think in terms of knowing God and confession and why am I not feeling the way I'm supposed to, why am I not feeling good during prayer and all this stuff, falls under one big lie or deceitful thing, which is that we have time. Because we're told when we're very young, because I think it's out of our parents' love for us and the church fathers' love for us, that they tell us fast when you're young. Even if you don't understand it, you'll understand it later. But we're at that later right now. And we've been there for a few years now, all of us. So it's this idea that we keep delaying and later I'll start fasting seriously, later I'll start reading my Bible, I have time. But you don't know how much time you have. And I think that's the biggest and most powerful lie we can tell ourselves. And to start now.
That you have time. Yeah. Delay it and push it off. Yeah, I agree. And then another thing we do is when it comes to almsgiving, right? I'm just a broke college student. What could I give? I'm in debt. I don't own anything I have. Whatever. You just make a bunch of excuses up, right? To not give, to not serve, to not fast, you don't pray. And yeah, we just keep on piling these things up and we don't do anything. It needs to be something we challenge ourselves with. Let's walk out of here and say, let me do something about that problem in my life. And let me stop avoiding it. That's what we do. We avoid our problems because it's so painful to deal with. because it's so beloved. The problems the sins we have are so beloved. We're holding on to them. How are you going to receive anything if you're holding on to something? You have to make some room. So Lent is a time, I want to bring this back to Lent and wrap it up. I think we're ending, we're going over time. So I'll wrap it up. Lent is a time of some serious self-reflection. It's a time of prayer, time of fasting, time of almsgiving, time of mercy where you're able to forgive people and fix those things that have gone wrong in the past, and just increase whatever it is that you're doing now, just a little bit, with the guidance of your spiritual father. And by the grace of God, you'll find that this is like a springtime in your life. This is a time for it to really be spring, where things are blossoming in your life, things are growing, things are coming back to life. It's like winter, right? It's actually winter, right? And things are dead. And it's also dead in our spiritual life. Things are dead. But, Lent is springtime. So please just, take care of your garden. Take care of your garden. Water it. Let the sun shine. Protect it. Take the weeds out. Think about Lent as a garden. Don't think about it as this dark, stormy period. Fasting, prayer, beating my chest, batanias, all this stuff. Think about it as a springtime. Glory be to God forever. Amen.